you're not quite familiar with all those things, because we are going to dive a little deeper, and that's why I recommend to do that first. So, number one, getting relevant on Instagram. There is actually 3 important questions here you have to answer for yourself. Is my audience on Instagram, so the audience I want to reach, are they actually on Instagram or not? Secondly, do they find me on Instagram, or do they find my business on Instagram? And the third question is, am I actually producing the right content, the relevant content for them? So first of all, let's look at social media overall. There's 3.81 billion users on social media, which is quite half the population on Earth. So there's a lot of people on social media overall that contains Facebook, Instagram, everything. If you look on Instagram users are between 18 and 35 mostly. 2/3 of their users are in this age range. But Instagram is growing older because kind of every social network is aging, and there's older user groups growing faster. Why is that? I can just think back to my own time on Facebook, for example. I was quite active on Facebook in 2010, 2011, because it was just interesting. It was kind of this small network where you have all your friends online. We were 18, 19 at the time, and you were posting on each other's timeline. And then at one point, my parents started to be interested in Facebook, and my mother created actually a Facebook account. And that's just the point where it kind of shifts, that the younger generation looks for the new platform where they can be privately amongst themselves, and the older generation is interested in the platform. So that's completely normal, something every social media platform encounters in its growth. But that's just something you have to consider. And it's interesting because on Instagram you have a lot of older user groups that are right now growing really fast. You can see it on the slides that the user groups between 35 and 65 plus are growing right now. So another thing I want you to consider is Instagram versus income and education. Instagram has a higher distribution of users in higher income groups and also in higher educational groups. So that's just something you want to keep in mind if you think of your audience and think if they are on Instagram or not. So I think overall we can answer the question, is my audience actually on Instagram? Probably yes, at least part of it is on Instagram. So the next thing is finding on Instagram. What are people looking for on Instagram? They are actually trying to discover new products. They're looking up products they already know, doing research on Instagram, and they also make decisions on whether to buy a product or not, or a service. So Instagram has been getting really, really relevant in search terms in the last years. Because a lot of people are right now, they're just searching Instagram instead of Google. So especially the younger generation, if you're not on Instagram, you're actually not legit, you're not relevant. They're just typing in your brand or the kind of service you offer and looking via Instagram to find out if you are relevant, if you are there, if you're even legit. So that's something to consider here. There's 2 ways actually how people search on Instagram, because if they don't know yourself or your brand, they're just looking for categories or services. So that's very basic overall. They might look for a dermatologist, they might look for a surgeon or something like that. Or if they already know yourself and already know your brand, they're looking for your brand name, for your personal name. And let's look at some examples here. So for example, we have Tony Young here, who is a plastic surgeon from America, and he has the category selected plastic surgeon. Perfect, he is a plastic surgeon, he selected the most specific category. That's the thing you want to do. You don't want to just choose something like medical or medical health or something like that. So there's overall categories and there's very specific ones. And you have to find the most specific for your service or your product. That's something he did right here, because he did just that. Then we look at Dr. Kassir, another plastic surgeon from America. Why did I actually choose those two? That's just the first ones that can come up if you just search for plastic surgeon. One of them, because he has it in the category box. The other one, this one, Dr. Kassir, because he used the name field for not only putting his name in it, but also his profession. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Maybe you want to add your profession to your name field, because people are going to find you that way. And the third thing that Instagram actually considers in search terms is name. It is the category and the username. And here's something really, really interesting already in those two examples. If you type in Dr. Kassir, you find him in a second. If you type in Anthony Young, which is the full name of the plastic surgeon I showed you before, and he is with that name, with Anthony Young, he is on YouTube, he's on Twitter, his website is called Anthony Young, and on Instagram, he just calls himself Tony Young as a username. So if you put in on Instagram Anthony Young in the search box, we can try this right now. So if we are here and type in Anthony Young, we're finding a lot of people, but not the plastic surgeon Tony Young. So his username is just Tony Young MD. And in the information below the category, you can see that he has listed Anthony Young, so his real name, but just in the information box. And that's a problem right here, because Instagram is not looking at the information box. So your username should contain as little as abbreviations as possible, because people are going to look for your name and you want to be found. So, second question is answered. Do they find me on Instagram? If you're following those three things, the name, the username, and the category, and try to put in as much as information as possible, you're going to be found on Instagram. And before we're looking at the third question, am I producing the right content for my audience? This is a really big question, and that's where we're looking at Instagram's channels. Why do I keep saying that Instagram is not just one channel? Well, let's look just at this slide here. Instagram started out as a classic photography platform. In 2010, 2011, it was all about photography. It was about sharing photos on the app. Then Facebook bought Instagram and slowly started to develop it from this photography platform into a video-based platform, actually. Because they started with Instagram Live, they started with Instagram Stories in 2016. You were able to actually post videos on your feed already in 2013. Then they started with IGTV, with Instagram Reels. So everything goes in this direction of video content, which is really important to consider, because everybody has Instagram as this photographic platform in mind, but it already developed a focus on video. Here you can see my first post on Instagram, and it was just like that. It was sharing this very moment right now. For example, here you have a sunset that was in 2011. I took this photo with my smartphone. I put this really cringy frame around it. That was just the time Instagram was used that way. And I posted it right away, and that's it. I got my 22 likes or something like that. And compared to what Instagram looks now, this is a picture, one of my latest posts, which is taken with a camera at the perfect timing, perfect light. We went out at 5 a.m. to catch that perfect light on this lake. Stuff like that, taken with professional camera, of course. So it's highly curated, it's very professional, and it's actually photography and videography right now. If we look at the different channels, as I want to call it, we have the Instagram feed, which is still mainly about photography, but also a little bit about video. Then we have Instagram stories, where you can post this 15 seconds of video, text, combinations of both, photos, and all that in various segments, which are online for 24 hours. Then you have live, so you can really go live with a live video on Instagram. IGTV I only going to mention in terms of live streaming, because as a channel itself, right now it's not really relevant because you're not getting a lot of views on IGTV right now. So Instagram tried to promote that. It didn't really work out, but in case of live streaming, it's going to be a relevant element. Then we have Instagram Reels, the newest addition in terms of channels, which is 15 to 30 seconds of video. It contains of jump cuts, very, very fast and short cuts in your video, mostly with music. And then we have Instagram Direct, which also has to be considered as its own channel, because you're interacting directly with your customers, with your clients. So just a few developments to think about this Instagram is more video content term that I talked about earlier. Instagram right now has around 1 billion of users, and 500 million users are watching Instagram stories, but not overall, but on a daily basis. So half of all users are really actively watching stories every day. That's a huge number. And stories are right now more relevant than the Instagram feed. Why is that? Even Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg told to reporters that he thinks that the Instagram stories are way more important and are getting more and more important in the coming years, because people are spending a lot of time in Instagram stories, and of course that's something Instagram itself wants, that the user spends as much time as possible in the Instagram app. And my bold prediction here is that Instagram Reels in a few years are actually going to be the most important channel, even more important than Instagram Stories, and way more important than the Instagram feed. So 3 different channels. Let's see how that all plays out, but you have to just look at those channels as completely different. So another question I get a lot is, if I talk about different channels, does that mean that every channel has its own user base? Are Instagram users just there for one channel? Well, I wouldn't say that, because overall it's all inside the Instagram app. You have your Instagram profile where you can access Instagram stories, as well as the feed, as well as Reels, as well as live streams and direct. But from my point of view, every user has its own kind of favorite channel. So for me, for example, I watch a lot of stories. So my favorite channel definitely is Instagram Stories. Compared to other users, for example, older users, there's a lot of users that are just watching the Instagram feed, just scrolling through the feed, and not really utilizing Instagram Stories or Instagram Reels, which is a younger audience. So you just have to look at the different channels and understand what's important and which kind of users are more interested in stories, are more interested in the feed, and so on. So if we look, for example, on the Instagram feed, people are interested in inspiration. They're looking for aesthetics, they're looking for beauty there. So you want to have your high-class photographs there, you want to have great videos there, but it's very, very high level, super curated, has to really be aesthetically pleasing. Stories are a bit different. They are also, of course, aesthetically pleasing, but Instagram users are looking for more information, deeper information on a specific topic. They are looking for interaction, for some sort of entertainment there. You can combine pictures, videos, texts, graphics. Users are used to click on a link in an Instagram story, for example. Yeah, that's about stories. On Instagram Reels, users are really looking for entertainment. So first of all, Instagram Reels have to be entertaining. If they contain information, this information has to be really simple and easygoing. If they contain too much information, it won't work. And Instagram Reels are video only. So right now there is no option to upload photos on Instagram Reels, not even for small cuts or something like that. Instagram Direct, users that use Instagram Direct and want to communicate via direct message with you are most of the time looking for very specific information, something they couldn't just find on your Instagram channel or on your website or couldn't really get hold of in stories. And on Instagram Live, users are actually looking for something new. They are looking for new information, maybe a new product you're talking about or something like that. And the Instagram aesthetics, which is the main topic today, they already start at your profile. Why is that? Because if you are an Instagram user and you're deciding if you follow a profile or not, because you found the profile, for example, via an Instagram influencer collaboration where the profile was tagged, or you just found this new company and you look it up on Instagram, you want to know what's going on here. You want to know who this is, what is this company all about, and you want to know what you can expect as a follower. So what's going to be the next post? What are they going to talk about? Is it completely random, or do I think I have like an idea what's coming next, and am I interested in that? So for example, if we just look on the phone right here, if we go to an Instagram profile, for example, let's take this one here from Real Beauty Vienna, which is a laser hair removal service actually. This profile by itself is really aesthetically pleasing in the first second when I look at it, and I know there's going to be a lot of people here. I'm going to see a lot of treatments. I also have story highlights. They already have a story online right now. So I can really get a feel of what I'm expecting next. So there might be another picture of some hair removal, maybe something about bikinis or something like that. I really know what's coming next. It's very feminine, for example, and they have this clear aesthetic, so I understand what's going on here. So if we look at a profile, what kind of information can we give a user? How can we bring Instagram users or potential followers to really follow our profile? We have here a profile of a plastic surgeon, Benjamin Gehl, a plastic surgeon from Vienna. And what he does here is in my opinion, quite good, because first of all, he has a profile picture that already shows him at work. So it's not only personal, but also informative. You have a category, so it says already that he's a plastic surgeon, perfect. You have information on his area of work. So he lists a few areas of work where he's doing stuff. He has his website there, he has his location there, he designed highlights. So story highlights are really important here, because as a user, if a story is only online for 24 hours, I don't know what's coming next or what the stories are going to be overall. So I might want to check out the story highlights, and he did that with small symbols and also text underneath. So I can really imagine that there is something about laser, for example, or he has this camera for his blogger collaborations and stuff like that. And also his feed is quite consistently. So I really see that where he's going. He has a lot of before and afters, for example, and those 3 or 6 latest feed posts are actually really important, because if they are consistent as a potential follower, I can imagine what's going to be the next post. And then I can decide if I might be interested in that or not, and I decide if I follow or not. So it has to be really consistent, and it has to be appealing, of course, to my target group. So let's look at the Instagram feed in detail. A question I get a lot is, okay, you're talking about very professional photos, you're talking about super curated feeds. Do I have to be a professional photographer to even use Instagram and the Instagram feed? Well, no, you don't have. But, there's always a but, there are certain aesthetics that you have to follow, that you have to consider on Instagram to really be able to start a successful Instagram profile. And first of all, let's look at the content on Instagram. There is just a few differences to, for example, classic photography. There's a few differences to classic advertisement. So Instagram just has its completely own aesthetic. It's very minimalistic. It has color schemes that work versus color schemes that don't work that well. The aspect ratio is completely different because the best aspect ratio that works is the portrait format. We'll come to that in a second. It's all about composition, but in a very minimalistic way. So too difficult and complex compositions might work in classic photography, might really work out well if you stand in front of a picture in a gallery and look at it for 5 minutes. But on Instagram, that just doesn't work. A lot of personality comes in here because Instagram is still a social media network, and the social part of it really depends on personality, and Instagrammable content works. So there is just some specific kind of content that works out really well. So let's look at the aspect ratio, because a lot of people think that Instagram is still doing everything in squares. It did that in the beginning, because in the beginning you could only share squares on Instagram. But as of right now, you can also share the portrait format, which is the perfect format for Instagram because it is your smartphone screen. You're using the most of the screen. It's 4:5 right now, and it works out the best because you're just kind of using most of the screen you can use. So if you are, for example, looking at your phone again here, and if you're scrolling through the Instagram feed, you can see that, first of all, most of the people are actually using the portrait format, and it just takes up much more space of the whole screen. So that's why it's so important. For example, here you have a picture which is not in portrait format. It takes up way less from the screen than pictures or videos in portrait. So that's really important. Another important thing is color schemes. Here we're looking at two different profiles. On the left you have Ja Natürlich, which is an Austrian organic food producer, and the whole profile is in brownish colors, in green colors, and it really gives you this farm-like feeling already. So that works out pretty well for them because it makes sense considering their values and what they wanna, what information they wanna give you, and what feeling they wanna share with you, and it also is very consistent. On the right side you have ÖBB, which is an Austrian railway company, and what they are doing is they are only using reddish, orangish colors and also blue colors. So they desaturate everything else, or they just don't want to have it in frame when they're doing their production, which gives them as well a very consistent look. If it really is perfect for what they are doing as a railway company, I'm not so sure about that. But still, in terms of consistency, that's something you really want to consider and want to try to work out your Instagram feed as consistent as possible. Another thing is saturation. You don't want to have too saturated pictures. That just doesn't work on Instagram. Also, high dynamic range stuff. That's just too much for the phone screen. Doesn't really work out well and doesn't have this Instagram aesthetic you want to achieve. Also, brighter pictures are working way better than darker pictures. Why is that? easy explanation. Everybody's on their own smartphone. Some smartphone screens are brighter, others are not. So if the smartphone screen is darker, or if you're trying to save battery and have it in a very dark screen mode, you will see brighter pictures better than darker ones, and darker ones will be just too dark, which is why brighter pictures are just working better on Instagram. And you don't want to overuse filters, of course, so try to work with filters. A subtle layer of filtering is always good, especially for consistency, but you don't want to overuse that. Another disclaimer here. Katrin, another social media consultant for Sroma is more, did a talk about how to become a content rockstar. So if you want to know more about content and how to produce content for Instagram and Facebook, how to use different apps which allow you to use filters and stuff like that, you want to check out this workshop as well. About details, yeah, I already showed you how fast the Instagram feed is. You just scroll through and you don't see a lot of detailed stuff. So you want to keep it simple. You want to keep it minimalistic. You want to have one object that's really in focus and not too much going on in the picture, because you're going to just, as a user, scroll over it and go to the next. And that's not what you want to achieve. You want to really hook the user to your picture and to your content. Yeah, screen size is also important, because you always have to consider that not every user has this huge smartphone. They might have smaller phones, smaller screens, and then again, it's more important to have just a very minimalistic shot, because then the size of the screen doesn't matter that much. Yeah, Instagrammable content. If we look at those really bloggerish, lifestyle-y pictures, that's just something that works on Instagram. So if you follow a few bloggers, which you should do, especially in terms of influencer relations, you're going to see which content they are posting, how they are trying to keep this very curated profile. And there's always something that works, something like architecture, design, flat lays with almost everything, food works, still lifes always work very well, and also trends. So you want to see those trends, you want to use them. For example, right now a lot of bloggers are using black and white picture every now and then. So every, I don't know, third or sixth picture in their feed is in black and white. Or they are using those subtitle, Tarantino-esque subtitles, where they use this yellow font underneath the black and white pictures, for example. That's just something you want to consider, you want to see, you want to know those trends. Maybe you can use them for your Instagram profile as well. Yeah, social media is all about personality. That's also something that's really, really important. Here I have an example from a client of mine, Thomas Brezina, who is a famous author, and he is using the personality to kind of perfection, because we just tried out if he posts something where he's not in the frame, or if he's just smaller in the frame, for example some travel shot or something like that, where he's in front of a mountain or something like that, it just doesn't work. If his face is really recognizable on the picture, that works, because people want to have personality, especially if you're already known. So for bloggers, stars, influencers, models, that's really something you want to use. You really want to be personal and have yourself on the pictures. So the question here is, how does that work on a business level? What's the business approach behind this, if you're not already a well-known star or something like that? Well, there is something, because you can develop from a personal profile to a brand profile, or even have two profiles. I will show you two examples in a second. But what's important here is that with this personal content, you build a lot of trust. So people are trusting you because they see that you as a person are really doing what you're trying to promote here. And a lot of brands did that. If they started out as a person with their personal profile, then developed into a brand profile, they still maintain the personal account, and it's on the personal side, it's very intimate, very personal content, and mixed with, of course, branded content. So, for example, if we look here at Dr. Barbara Sturm, we can look at that on the phone again. So let's check her out. Let's look at her brand profile, which is really all about the brand. So you have products here, products again, then you have live talks, for example. You also have very, very clean branded shots, products. But you also have products which are shown to you by the person behind the brand, Dr. Barbara Sturm herself. Here again. And if we switch now to the personal profile, she's just maintaining that as well, because it's really important, as she can build trust with her personal profile, showing that she's really using the products, showing the person behind the brand, which is super important, works out really, really well here. On her personal profile, she has 60,000 followers as well. She started with that. Then she did the professional profile, which of course right now is even bigger, but that's what you want to achieve, because all your media budget, of course, goes to the professional profile. And on the private profile, she shows her kids, she shows her daughter, her son, but she also shows her own routine. And she also shows her products, of course, every now and then. But it's just this mix of very personal stuff mixed with her brand. And that's working perfectly for her. And another example here we can look at is West Wing. Great example as well for personal and brand profile, because Delia, the founder of West Wing, she has a personal profile where she just has this perfect mix of personal and really West Wing content, actually. So she's just showing her home on every second picture, interior design shots, where she's using, of course, all the products you can get at West Wing, while at the brand's profile, which she's of course referring to, there's only interior shots, only branded, and they just, from now and then, they are going to show her as a person as well. So that's something that works out really well. And I can't go on. Doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
Cut. Why is that? Sie aufgeklickt?
Computer hat sich aufgehängt?
Ja.
Gut, dann machen wir deinen Cut einfach mal.
Ah ja, jetzt geht's, glaube ich, wieder. Ja, jetzt wird's wieder gehen.
Ja, dann machen wir einfach weiter.
So the next thing is telling the important stories. So as you can already guess, it's about Instagram stories. What content works on stories? In general, it is called stories for a reason, because it's all about storytelling. You want to pick up your audience, you really want to have a full story for your audience in various segments, so variety is really important. You want to mix up between video content, photos, text, information. You want to have some entertainment, so maybe a funny video or a GIF or something like that. And you want to have a lot of interaction here. So Instagram stories is something which is really an active channel where you can really interact with your audience, where your audience is used to interaction and wants this interaction part of it. They want to have really a direct way of communicating with you via stories. The general structure, you try to really tell the one story. That's really important, because a lot of people are just posting randomly on stories. But that just doesn't work, because people don't know what they are expecting, what information you want to give them. You really want to tell one story. We always say use 5 to 7 segments, which is kind of the perfect length of a story. You don't have to have audio, but if you use audio, you always want to have some kind of subtitle-like information. You don't want to just have subtitles, but you want to sum up the most important information that comes from the audio as well in text, because a lot of people are sitting on the underground, sitting on the tram, and they are looking at stories without audio, and they still want to have the information. You don't have to be too serious on stories. It's just something where people are used to at least some entertainment. And of course, you want to have variety. You don't want to only directly talk into your phone. A lot of bloggers do that, but their audience is really used to that. And they are also switching up content right now. They just try to, like a lot of YouTubers, try to just talk to their audience in stories, but they are also mixing up right now because they learned that people are just more hooked to a story if they are not only direct talks. Consistency is really important here as well. You want to have recurring design elements. For example, here you have voestalpine, a big steel manufacturer we are working with. They have this blue corporate color and white, of course, and that's something we want to use in stories as well. So we always have the same font in stories, we always have the same blue in the stories, and we always mix it up with blue and white, and don't just use random colors, for example. So you want to have consistency, you want to have at least some corporate design in here. You don't want to overdo that. It still has to feel like a real Instagram story. It really has to have this look and feel, but you want to be recognizable, and you want to have, of course, some consistency with your corporate design. You could also work with mood boards, for example, to just get a feel of it. And the story aesthetics are a little bit different than from the Instagram feed, so it's not all about this super professional photo. It's more about this layout. It's about the whole story in one thing that should really match together. And it's a little bit less sophisticated, I would say, in comparison to the feed when it comes to aesthetic, but still it's growing more and more aesthetically, and you want to stay true to your brand's values, of course. Interaction is really important, I already said that. Here we have two examples where we're using small quizzes, we're using polls, for example, in a more creative way, so you can use polls for your users to tell you something about them. You can use them as quiz elements as well. You want to use the question sticker, for example. You want to also answer those questions people are sending in, because they're used to sending in questions via that sticker. And that's just perfect, because you're going to learn a lot about your community and your audience. You also want to use subtle elements like a slider, just to kind of break this next story kind of viewing habit of the user, where he's just having a small slider where he can actually do something. And that works really well. You want to add, of course, tags, information tags, and tagging other people, because in the end it's all about sharing as well. So you want to share stories which you're tagged in your stories, but you also want to tag other people in your stories if it makes sense. So for example, if you're doing a collaboration with an influencer, you might want to tag them in your stories if you're actually talking about that, because then they are going to share it or might want to share it. You can talk to them. Communication is key as always, and you also want to share the influencer stories about your company or about your service. And yeah, that's just something where you can expand your own reach by just using this share mechanism. Most importantly, what I want to tell you here is stories are not live anymore, because in the beginning of stories, a lot of people were just posting stories kind of immediately. Same was with the Instagram feed in the beginning. People were just taking a picture, posting it. Stories, same thing. You were looking at this beautiful sunset, you did a story, you posted it immediately. But what you did not do, in most of the times, you didn't tell a real story. But that's what users are expecting, and that's what really hooks them and what really keeps them in your story. If you think about it, You prepare the full story, you prepare the text, you prepare the design and everything, and in the end you're posting at the perfect timing, which depends when your audience is online. For example, if you say, okay, you can see that in the Instagram Insights, of course, your audience is online in the morning more than in the evening. You might want to post the whole story in the morning, for example. And then you don't just post one element at a time, but all 5, 6, 7 elements at one time. You don't want to be too boring. You don't want to have too much information, so try to mix it up. Keep it as simple in terms of information as possible. Rather tell your audience less in a more clear way than too much. And you want to look at some KPIs here as well. And I'm just giving you the stay rate, so the rate of people who are watching the first story and watching the last story. So for example, if 200 people are watching the first one and 150 people are watching the last one, you have a stay rate of 75%, and between 70 and 80% are very, very good stay rates, because of course there's always some people who are dropping out of the story, because you can imagine that by yourself. If you're sitting on the bus looking through Instagram stories and then you get out of the bus, of course you're just closing the story and you don't have to watch it until the end. But that's just something you want to keep in mind if you look at your stories, and if your stay rates are dropping far beneath that, you might want to have too much information in your stories. It might just be not the right content for your audience, for example. Timing and frequency is also something that's really important here. The perfect frequency, of course, is daily stories. If you look at bloggers, at influencers, they're mostly posting stories every day. I know it's not something that you can really do as a brand, as a company. And what we recommend here is setting yourself a goal to at least post 2 stories a week, to just have some sort of consistency, because Instagram is really valuing that consistency. And yeah, that's just in terms of frequency something you want to achieve. And yeah, as I already said, the posting time really depends on your target group, and you just want to check your insights to see at what time and on what day they are online actually. Another thing I get a lot from clients is, yeah, but stories are only online for 24 hours. Why should I invest in Instagram stories? First of all, yes, Instagram is a very, very fast-moving network. It's social media, it's not your website, and Instagram stories are only online for 24 hours. But you have highlights where you can save Instagram stories for later on. So users can check out the highlights. We talked about that before, that a lot of potential followers are looking at your highlights to just find out in which direction your stories are going, if that's interesting content for them or not. And that's why you want to do Instagram highlights. You can think of what categories you want to have. Really try to not put all your stories in highlights, but think what are the real highlights of my stories, which are the most important ones, which stories you want to show to a completely new user who doesn't know who you are, for example, and what you do. And which is important. What is important here is that you really design icons, so it's easier for the user to already know what this highlight is all about. Name them and of course keep them relevant. The next thing we look at is Instagram Reels. Instagram Reels is pretty new because Instagram decided to just clone TikTok. TikTok is this app where you have those short videos, 15 to 30 seconds, with music, a lot of entertainment going on. It has a high growth potential, a very young target audience. The addiction potential is super high because it's full screen and you're just hooked inside of TikTok. What did Instagram do? Well, they decided to just clone it one-to-one, so it's exactly the same actually. Why did they do that? Well, they have experience with cloning stuff, which worked out really well, because before they launched Instagram Stories, they tried to buy Snapchat, which already had this story feature. that didn't work out, so Instagram decided to just do it by themselves. They just created the same software for stories and developed it even further. It worked out super good for them, and they're doing the same right now with Reels. And they're really promoting Instagram Reels right now. So it's something you really want to look at, because it's working out so well for all users right now, because Instagram, of course, wants Reels to be successful. If you look at it, as I said, it's full screen. It's a completely new channel in the end. And you already have it in the search bar or next to the search bar in the menu bar. On a lot of profiles. It doesn't matter if you have it right now. Instagram is always rolling out those features slowly, and either way you are looking at Reels through the search function or through the own menu icon. We can show you that here on the phone for a second. So for example, if we look at search here right now, the first thing that pops up is Instagram Reels. If we tap on that, we are inside of Instagram Reels, and then we are just hooked. We get content after content, and we can just scroll through and see a lot of different content, from information to a lot of entertainment, funny content. And as you can see here, for example, there's this featured tag. So Instagram is also featuring Instagram Reels from specific users right now, which of course gives you the ability to reach a lot of new people and reach new audience. So, how to use Reels actually. As I said, it's 15 to 30 seconds of video. It's fast cuts, so-called jump cuts, and it's highly visual. So it's really only video. You don't want to add a lot of text. If you have any information in it, it has to be very simple and very subtle. What works out perfectly, which could be interesting for you as well, is the use of products, of routines, of treatments, and for example, before and after stuff. And as I said, the potential right now of Instagram Reels is huge, because you're right now able to easily reach 1.5 to 2 times the follower count of your profile. So if you have like 10,000 followers, you could easily reach 20,000 people with Instagram Reels. And if you compare that to views on your stories or on your feed posts, you're going to see that Reels right now has a lot of more potential than the other two networks. So if we check out one perfect example of the usage of Instagram Reels from Dr. Barbara Sturm. She has this reel of her winter kit routine from her daughter, and as you can see, you see the whole routine, you see all the different products, so that's really perfect for your brand, and it has this reel style, so super fast cuts. The idea of this product just falling from the sky is a great idea, a great fast cut. That's very well done, and that's something you might want to try out as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is live streams. Why do I call it purposeful live streams? Well, I see a lot of live streams that are without any purpose. But let's answer the question, why should I go live first? Well, easy, because followers inside the app are going to get a notification that you're live right now. Perfect, more reach. Also, you're going to appear on the start of all Instagram stories at your followers. So every follower kind of sees you first, which also expands your reach. And you have this live stream, so real-time communication with your audience via comments. You could also use Q&A stickers beforehand. And yeah, live is something to consider, but as I said, you wanna have a purpose. So, for example, if you have a press conference which is live streamed on TV, that's not something you want to do on Instagram, or just normal press conference. That's not the content you want to show here. Video from a product launch party where you're just showing the party, not really. if you are thinking about a concept, how to do a product launch on Instagram Live, something different. There you have your purpose. If you're just live streaming the beautiful sunset right now, it's just boring. Nobody wants to see that live. People really want to have a concept behind live. They want to really be engaged. They want to be really hooked in the live stream, and they want to have new information for them. So you want to see Instagram Live as something really precious. You want to use if you have a clear idea and a clear purpose and you're really, really well prepared. So in terms of preparation, you want to think about what I want to talk about. You want to think about the objective of your live talk. So what's actually the kind of information I want to give the user? When do I want to talk about it? You want to promote it in advance. If we look at another example here, again, the author I talked about earlier, Thomas Brezina, in terms of COVID-19, he decided to do his product launch online via Instagram stories. He told his audience that he's going to do a live stream. He told that a week before, a week in advance. He told them at what specific time he's going to go live. And he also gave them the chance to send in their questions beforehand, because you can use the question and answer tool in your stories as well. That works pretty well. And his audience just knew, okay, on Friday on 7:30 p.m. he's going to be live and I am going to watch that. Because if you're just going to go live at a specific time, your followers, they don't know it, they won't have time, and you're not going to reach as many people as you could. And another advice here, if you're doing a live stream, I would keep it from 15 to 30 minutes, not much longer, because people are going to lose interest. And if you are just going live for 3 minutes, that's going to be a little bit short. Topics that are really working, Q&As are working really well, because the followers can ask questions beforehand. Live chats on specific topics worked really well. We saw a lot of live chats in the whole COVID-19 pandemic, because a lot of people, instead of doing a talk together, they just went online and did a live talk together. And that worked out pretty well if you have a very specific topic and if you have questions from users beforehand. You don't want to sit there and wait for users to ask questions and feeling kind of weird because you have to wait. You want to have questions beforehand. You want to be really prepared for your live talk. Then it works out pretty well. And here IGTV comes in because Instagram changed the way of how live streams are online after the actual live event. They are now saved to IGTV, and that works out pretty well, while other videos on IGTV don't really perform because not a lot of people are actively using the app. So you want to, of course, share and save and share your streams to Instagram TV. Another thing I wanna give you here is that live talks are far from perfection. It's live. It always has to feel authentic. You want to, of course, think about your background, think about the lighting where you sit in, and you don't want to be too dark or too bright or something like that. But still, users don't expect you to be in the studio for a live stream, for example. Number 7, staying in touch with your patients, a channel that is often kind of forgotten because people think that's just messages, who cares, Instagram Direct. I would say it's extremely important because you have a direct connection to your audience, to your clients, and you really want to use that. So if people are asking something on social media overall, not only on Instagram, they expect you to answer in a very, very short amount of time, because they always expect a real person behind the profile sitting there just waiting for them to ask something. So you want to really have somebody who is always checking messages, trying to answer as fast as possible, and you want to build up trust here, because if you're really in a direct communication, you really get to know your users, your community, you get to know your clients, you can ask questions, you can really try to interact with them on a private level, but you always want to keep it very sensitive. You don't want to try to sell them something directly via Instagram message. You want to build your community, you want to manage your community, because in the end, Instagram is a very community driven channel. It's very positive. There's a lot of human-to-human interaction, and your followers, of course, they want to be part of it. They want to see you as the person behind the brand. They want to communicate with you, and you also want to communicate with them, because that's a two-way street. You want to use that. You don't only want to answer questions, but you also want to ask questions if it's appropriate, of course. And you want to use inputs from your community. You want to ask them what kind of content is interesting for them, for example. And you don't only want to react. Another thing that comes in important here is the actual community building. So not just reacting to messages, but building up your community around your product or your service. How can you do that? Well, the easiest way is either you find an existing community. So for example, at Bella Flora, a gardening company from Austria, there was already this huge plant influencer community, and it was easy to just engage with them and try to find the relevant people there. On the other hand, you can really build up your community. You want to ask people who might be interested in your content. You want to ask them what they need. You want to find out what problems or goals they have, and you want to try to interact with them. You can, of course, search hashtags, for example. So if we look at the hashtag aesthetic medicine, for example, that could be important for some of you to really interact with the people who are posting under that hashtag, because, for example, they might have a question about a service that you actually offer. You might want to interact with them, maybe follow them. They could be potential clients of yours. What's important here is you want to make relevant comments, so you don't only want to comment with something like a nice photo, nice shot or something like that. You always have to go and try to really help them in some kind of way, because then they're going to build up trust to you as a company or brand, and you can start really getting into a relationship with your clients or potential clients. You don't want to be insensitive. I already said that. You don't want to really sell something here. You want to help them. So community is something you want to proactively build, but the selling part of it is reactively, because of course if they know, oh, there's this dermatologist that helped me when I had this or that problem, of course they're going to come back to you and buy your products. And last but not least, we want to look at how to reach new audience, because as most of you might know, the organic reach on social media is declining. Of course, because Facebook and Instagram, they want to promote their ads and not only organic content, because if organic content would reach already everybody, then of course why would there be a need to really have advertisement on those platforms? That's a completely normal thing. So Facebook is completely declining the organic reach. This is also going to happen to Instagram at some point. And to counter that, you want to just increase your reach with ads. So you want to have a media strategy and a strategy for your organic content as well, because of course if you are already creating high quality content that's relevant for your audience, you want to reach more people than also only your organic reach you're able to reach without ads. So you want to have ads, but you want to have also a plan, an ad budget. You want to work out a strategy here as well, obviously. And I just want to show you two different ad formats that are relevant: the Instagram feed ad and the Instagram story ad, because both of them are actually quite different. An Instagram feed ad is pushing an existing feed post or creating a new one to reach additional users. That's something you might want to consider. And the Instagram story ad is just a 15-second story segment that comes between the users' stories from their people they are following. So what's the difference here? In an Instagram feed ad, it's all about the visual content, the pictures. You might want to attract new followers, you want to have more interaction with your content, you want to have a visual statement of what you're doing. So you're going to increase reach in terms of inspiration here. With Instagram stories, on the other hand, there is video, graphics, text, so you really have one story, one segment where you have more information. You can trigger website clicks with Instagram stories. That works really well with that, versus the Instagram feed ad doesn't really promote a lot of website clicks or trigger a lot of website clicks, so that's more of a Instagram story ads kind of tool. It also triggers purchases, while on the Instagram feed ad it's only about the inspiration part of it. So in the Instagram story ads, it's really about increasing the reach in terms of further information, purchases, website clicks. Yes, that's about it. If you have any questions, you might want to stay in touch. Just visit my Instagram profile, or you can also shoot me an email. I'm always happy to help. Thank you for tuning in for my talk today, and bye-bye.
So that's it, Michael. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. We're actually already ready to start with the Q&A section. Now I'll translate to Russian, okay? So, дорогие слушатели, наша презентация подошла к концу. Спасибо большое вам за внимание. Сейчас у нас есть 15 минут, и мы с удовольствием ответим на ваши вопросы. Один из вопросов, которые мы получили, звучит так: существует ли способ увеличить количество подписчиков в Инстаграме? So, Michael, one of the first questions we received is there still a way to increase followers on Instagram?
Yes, first of all, there is. There is still a way to increase followers, but it has gotten harder and harder the last years, because Instagram is transitioning from a platform that really encouraged creators to a platform that is basically an advertising platform. It's focused on advertising, and that means that, we've heard that in the presentation as well, that means that the reach you can get with organic posts is declining, but you can still use some tools that Instagram is providing to increase the reach. For example, Instagram Reels, that's we heard that as well, the most popular and most pushed kind of content that Instagram is currently really encouraging everybody to use. And because of that, because of Instagram being so much video related, the Instagram Reels are gaining more and more reach compared to, for example, stories or feed posts. So you can use that. And I would always recommend to use an ad strategy as well. So to really combine those two things. On one hand, use the right content, so very video-based content, and on the other hand, really use some media budget, because you don't want to just put content out there that's really good without anyone seeing it. So you really want to, people have the possibility to see it, and that's where you need some media budget.
Mm-hmm. Perfect, thank you very much. So now I translate to Russian. Вопрос звучал так: существует ли способ увеличить количество подписчиков в Инстаграме? Прежде всего, да, он существует. В последние годы это становится немножко сложнее, поскольку Инстаграм превращается из платформы, на которой представлены влиятельные лица, также платформы, на которой представлено огромное количество брендов, и, соответственно, все становится более ориентировано на рекламу. Это нормально для почти любой платформы социальных сетей, и тем не менее два таких главных способа, какими можно увеличить число подписчиков. Первый – это, конечно, заплатить за это, то есть включить рекламу. Реклама в Инстаграме может быть разработана как для получения большего количества подписчиков, также и для расширения охвата более широкой аудитории. А второй способ – это органический рост, что, конечно, чуть сложнее, так как Инстаграм нам дает большое количество разных инструментов, которые нужно правильно использовать. Например, использовать много видеоконтента, о чем говорилось тоже в презентации, что он набирает обороты все это время, и пытаться использовать ролики в Инстаграме, регулярно публиковать истории, взаимодействовать со своими подписчиками, со своей аудиторией. Это все еще хорошо работает, но для бизнеса лучше всего совмещать как органический контент, так и рекламу, чтобы добиться стабильного роста. We also have the second question, which sounds like this. So I don't really feel like sharing something personal. Is it really that important to post selfies and to show some personal life online? Второй вопрос звучит. Мне не очень хочется делиться чем-то личным в социальных сетях, и насколько это действительно важно публиковать селфи и делиться своей аудиторией, своей личной жизнью. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to really completely rely on selfies. That's not the point. But the thing is that social media in itself, in its core, is social. It's about personality. So it's really important to show the people out there, to show your followers that you are a real person behind all that. And you don't have to do that by only posting selfies. You could also, for example, encourage them to use products because you already use them, or because you know what's working and what's not. So you have to just bring in your personal values and show your audience what you're really standing for as a person, as a real person, because that's just something that lets the audience build up trust to you as a person and not just as a brand. So on social media, everybody is like expecting that you are real and a real person, and you want to use that to your advantage. But you don't have to just put selfies out there. That's not the point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you very much. Ответ на этот вопрос такой: вы не обязаны полагаться только на селфи, и в этом включено очень много всего другого. Для большинства брендов, особенно, конечно, в сфере медицинских услуг, люди хотят кому-то доверять, и это гораздо проще, если у них есть лицо, которое они время от времени видят, понимают, что за этим стоит настоящий человек, особенно в социальных сетях. Так что это важно, но, конечно, только вы можете решить, сколько вы хотите показать и что вы показываете. Дело не только в красивом лице или в селфи, а в том, чтобы поделиться своими личными ценностями, показать своей аудитории, чего вы стоите, что вас окружает, какие вещи для вас важны, также показать свою компетентность и рассказать свою историю о том, как вы пришли в профессию, как вы продолжаете расти, как вы учитесь. То есть дать аудитории понять и почувствовать, почему они должны доверять именно вам, и что есть такого особенного, что вы можете им предложить. So the question number 3 is the Instagram feed still important, or should I focus only on stories and reels?
So, as we mentioned in the keynote before, the importance is definitely shifting towards reels and stories. So, yes, I would shift to reels, I would shift to stories, but first of all, the feed is still important because reels are also distributed through the feed. So you have that as a tool for distribution as well. But what we see is that most people, especially creators, but also slowly the businesses are changing to shifting their creations and their content to about 70 to 80% reels and only 20% pictures and classic feed posts. a year ago that was completely different. So we see that more and more. And I would say that right now the quality over quantity aspect of it is more and more important. So if you post something in your feed, you really have to think about, is it worth that you're not going to get a lot of reach, but it's important, for example, for your core values, because you always have to think that people are still going to visit your profile if they decide if they want to follow you or not. And if your profile is highly curated, that helps, of course. So the quality of your feed posts is even more important, but the quantity of creation shifts towards video, towards reels and stories, yes.
Perfect, thank you very much. Третий вопрос звучал так. По-прежнему ли важна сама лента Инстаграм, или стоит сосредоточиться только на историях и роликах, потому что мы слышим о том, что они набирают все больше и больше популярность. Майкл говорит о том, что важность действительно смещается в сторону видео, но это не значит, что лента полностью теряет свою значимость. Во-первых, ролики по-прежнему распространяются в основном через ленту Инстаграм, а не через вкладку роликов. И пока это не изменится, лента будет оставаться актуальным инструментом. Еще один момент – профиль Инстаграма, он по-прежнему показывает все посты в ленте, то есть сейчас мы видим, что создатели переходят на 70-80% роликов и только 20% фотографий и каких-то стандартных постов в ленте. Таким образом, процентное соотношение меняется, ролики становятся важнее, мы видим, что фотографии, которые публикуются в ленте, намного более тщательно проработаны, чем, возможно, год назад, что тоже было представлено в презентации, на это обращают больше внимания, но аспект качества превыше количества в эти дни остается и даже еще больше усиливается в своей значимости. So I think that's it. Thank you very much again for this presentation, Michael. Thank you very much for the questions. Perfect. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Спасибо большое еще раз за ваше внимание, за вопросы. Надеемся, вам наша презентация была полезна и ждем вас на следующих лайв-трансляциях. Thank you.